All right, everyone, buckle up, because we're diving into some really interesting stuff today. We're talking about China's economic slowdown, but not the way you usually hear about it.
It's definitely a hot topic.
It is. And, we always like to go beyond the headlines here, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys sent in some seriously insightful articles, and let me tell you, there are some surprises in there.
Definitely some things that challenge conventional thinking.
Exactly. We're not just talking about numbers going down. We're going to uncover the global ripple effects, the changing power dynamics, even ghost towns.
Ghost towns. Okay, now you've got my attention.
I know, right? It's a fascinating angle. And here's the thing. We're going to unpack how this impacts you, even if you don't think you're directly connected to China's economy. Because, trust me, you are.
More connected than most people realize, I think.
Absolutely. So your sources are describing this as a structural change, not just like a temporary dip. Can you break that down for us? What does that actually mean?
Well, it's like the world economy was built on the assumption that China would just keep growing at this crazy speed forever.
Like an unstoppable engine.
Exactly. And now we're seeing the tremors from that engine sputtering. It's not just slowing down. It's fundamentally changing how it works. And that has a domino effect impacting every sector and countries all over the world, not just China.
Yeah, one of the sources even had this example about fewer Chinese tourists in Southeast Asia and how hotels and restaurants there are feeling the pinch. It really hits home how interconnected we all are,
It's a perfect illustration that slowdown in Chinese tourism is a symptom of this bigger economic shift.
Yeah.
And it's happening everywhere. Think about it. The products you use, the companies you invest in, chances are China's slowdown is already touching your life in ways you haven't even thought about.
It's true. And, another thing that surprised me from the research was how much China's shrinking population is playing into all of this.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
One article even specifically mentioned the one-child policy and how it's coming back to bite them, so to speak.
It makes sense, though. A shrinking workforce means less consumption, less investment. It's simple supply and demand. Fewer people mean less demand for goods and services, less money flowing through the economy.
It's like a chain reaction.
Exactly. And it gets even weirder, The sources mentioned these ghost towns in China, entire cities built during the boom years that are practically empty now.
Oh, yeah. Those pictures are eerie. It's like a visual representation of this whole economic shift, right? This stark reminder that things can change really fast.
Absolutely. They built all these cities expecting this never-ending growth, and now they're a monument to the fact that, things don't always go as planned.
And speaking of things not going as planned, we got to talk about the whole U.S.-China situation.
Oh, yeah. That's the elephant in the room.
Because that's adding fuel to the fire, right?
Yeah.
The source talked about trade wars, sanctions, all that stuff. It's definitely making things more complicated.
It creates so much uncertainty. Businesses get nervous, investors hold back, and that just slows everything down even more.
It's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And the source also brought up an interesting point about China's people's democracy under Xi Jinping and how that might be influencing their economic policy. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the source suggested that this focus on people's democracy could lead to a shift away from export-led growth. They might be moving towards a model that's more focused on domestic demand, which would have massive implications globally, of course.
It would be a huge shift.
It's a total game changer.
All right, so we talked about this slowdown, but what does it actually mean for businesses? Are companies changing their strategies because of this?
Oh, absolutely. They have to. And we'll get into some specific examples in the next part of our deep dive. Don't go anywhere. So yeah, businesses are definitely feeling the heat from China's slowdown.
Yeah, the sources mentioned some big companies that are seeing sales plummet in China, like Japanese and Korean automakers. Even tech giants and entertainment companies are taking a hit.
It's a wake-up call for sure. No one is immune to these global shifts. Companies that had been banking on China for growth are scrambling to adapt.
And it's not just that people are buying less,
right?
It sounds like their preferences are changing too.
Exactly. The sources specifically pointed out how Chinese companies are becoming more and more competitive. Their products are getting better, and they're appealing to Chinese consumers in a way that some foreign companies just haven't been able to match.
So how does all this impact our listeners in Indonesia? What does it mean for them?
Well, Indonesia, like a lot of emerging markets, is feeling the ripple effects. The sources talked about how those competitive Chinese products are making their way into markets like Indonesia, and that means local businesses are facing even tougher competition.
So it's a challenge, but also an opportunity, right?
Exactly. It's a chance for Indonesian businesses to step up their game. The sources suggested some strategies for strengthening local businesses and making them more competitive. One key takeaway was the importance of diversification.
Diversification? So not putting all their eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Right. Reducing dependence on any single market, including China, is key. Exploring new export markets, attracting investment from a wider range of sources. It's all about spreading the risk.
Makes sense. What else did the sources recommend?
Well, they emphasized investing in skills and technology, basically making sure the workforce is equipped to handle the demands of a rapidly changing global economy.
So upgrading skills, embracing new technology, all that good stuff.
Yep, it's about being adaptable and staying ahead of the curve, because the world is changing fast, and the companies and individuals who can change with it are the ones who will thrive.
One of the articles used a powerful analogy comparing China to a sleeping giant, even quoted Napoleon on that one. Even with this economic slowdown, could China be simply recharging, getting ready to reemerge even stronger?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's why it's so important to understand these long-term trends and their potential impact on the balance of power globally. China's still making big moves, investing in projects with global ambitions.
Like what? What kind of projects are we talking about?
Well, the source highlighted China's Belt and Road Initiative, for example. That's a massive infrastructure project that has the potential to reshape global trade routes and forge new geopolitical alliances.
So this isn't just about China's internal economic situation. It's about how those changes could ripple outwards and impact the entire world, right?
Exactly. And that leads to another important question. What can other countries do to navigate this shifting landscape? Because we can't just sit back and wait to see what happens.
They're all in this together, for better or worse.
Right, especially those of us in emerging markets like Indonesia. We need to be proactive. So let's dive into what Indonesia can do to position itself strategically in the face of these global shifts.
Okay, let's talk strategy. What do the sources have to say about that?
All right, so we've been talking about how Indonesia needs to position itself strategically as these global shifts play out. What did the sources suggest?
Well, one thing they really emphasized was the need to strengthen local businesses. Make them more competitive on a global scale.
It's like leveling up, right? Investing in innovation, improving efficiency, maybe even finding those niche markets where Indonesian businesses can really excel.
Exactly. Competing on price alone against those global giants, it's tough. You got to find ways to differentiate, offer something unique.
So it's not just about businesses, right? Individuals need to be thinking about these trends too. What skills are going to be in demand in this new world? How can people make themselves more competitive?
Adaptability is key. Being willing to learn new things, embrace new technologies, and be open to opportunities outside your comfort zone. Those are the skills that are going to be valuable in the long run.
It's about being a lifelong learner. Exactly. Never stop learning, never stop growing. And one of the sources also highlighted another important strategy: diversification.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that for businesses, but it applies to individuals too, right?
Absolutely. Don't limit yourself to a single industry or skill set. Explore different options. Build a diverse portfolio of skills and experiences. Because in a world that's changing this fast, adaptability is key. You need to be able to pivot and adjust to whatever comes your way.
Be ready for anything.
Exactly. The research also talked about the importance of collaboration. It's not just about individual effort. It's about governments, businesses, universities, and individuals all working together to find those innovative solutions.
Because the challenges we're facing are complex, right?
Right.
They require a collective effort to solve them.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together. The challenges are interconnected, and so are the solutions. And it's easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom when you're talking about things like economic slowdowns and global shifts. But one thing that really struck me from the research was this sense of optimism, this idea that we can actually use this moment to build something better.
I like that, turning a challenge into an opportunity. So it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving in this new world, right?
Exactly. It's about being proactive, innovative, and collaborative. It's about understanding that change is inevitable and that those who can adapt and even embrace that change will ultimately come out ahead.
It's been a fascinating deep dive, that's for sure. Thanks for breaking it all down for us.
My pleasure. It's been a great conversation.
And to our listeners out there, thanks for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration of China's economic shift and what it means for all of us. Remember, the world is changing fast, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing. Embrace the change, stay curious, and never stop learning. Until next time, keep diving deep.